What's up, YouTube? This is the Average Angler coming at you with some tips and tricks for a little shaky head fishing. It's that time of year. Actually, shaky heads can be fished year-round and can be very effective. They can be really, really good in the spawn, a matter of fact. Because, they'll sit in the bed. You can just kind of twitch it around, get that little tail up there floating around. But there's so many choices, honestly, how to fish them, baits to fish on them. And I don't limit them to the norm. And don't just use a shaky head all the time. You can use other baits or jig heads and fish it like you would a shaky head. This past weekend when I was at Lake Berryessa, Travis was fishing a frenzy nail. For those of you that don't know about the frenzy nail, one, I can't believe it, but two, it's a phenomenal jig head. It's a stand-up jig head. And of course it's not gonna, this one actually has a little line on it. Let's see. So as you can see, that jig head stands up really well. Comes out of snags really well. It's got a good, strong, stout hook on there. And these were designed and tested by Fishing Pro Greg Gutierrez. They come in 3/16 and quarter. They come in a variety of colors. It's the green pumpkin. And this is brown and black. Yellow with some black on it. And I don't see any right here, but they do also come in a watermelon color. Nice stout hook. Now, you can fish a lot of different baits on this. This is the Daiwa or Yamamoto Neko worm. Apparently the packages are harder to open than you'd like them to be. You can fish anything you want, really, on a shaky head. All right, so you see I just put that worm on there about yay far. And then great hook keeper here, right? Or bait keeper. Slide up over that and then just rotate that around. Put it back through the bait. There you have it. Plenty of bite there to hook your fish. Now, the cool thing about this length of worm here is if you get tore up a little bit after a few fish, you bite off 1/4 to 1/2 inch of the bait and bring it back on there, right? The nice long worm here, and being that it's a Yamamoto, Daiwa, Daiwa made by Yamamoto. How's that? You know it's full of salt. It's very similar to a Senko. So that worm's not going to float real well. So what you want to do is you want to keep the bait moving. As you're shaking it, just keep it moving. So slow reel, shake lightly, and slow reel at the same time. It'll keep that head standing up. It'll keep the worm tail floating and tantalizing in front of the fish to trigger them to bite. Now, there's a lot of other options. The Z-Man, and we all love Z-Man. They're awesome. The problem with Z-Man, if it's a problem, is that they won't work on a lot of heads, such as that screw head, right? I think that's a Picasso. This is my preferred screw type. This is an owner. They've been around forever. Again, it's got a great hook on it. It's got a good amount of bite. I fish all the way up to the mid-size brush hogs on these. However, this head with that hook keeper works very well on the TRDs, or Elastec, if you will. Okay, slides up over there, no problem, right? Actually, this hook keeper is better than TRD's hook keeper. Go figure that one, huh? And there you go. Still plenty of bite in here to hook your fish, right? If you were to only carry one shaky head, if I was to only carry one shaky head, it would be the Frenzy Nail. You can find these all over the place. Tackle Warehouse has them. If you're in California, there's tons of local shops have them. Phil's Propeller has them up at Shasta. And you see how easy I am able to pull that back off of that hook keeper just by turning it around, pulling it down, and sliding it. Probably the best designed shaky head on the market, in my opinion, okay? So why do I have this one? Well, I've used the owners, I believe, since they've been out. Honestly, they've been around a long time. It's just been kind of my staple. When will I use that? I will use this baby brush hogs, robo worms, any kind of straight tail worms, zoom finesse worms, zoom swamp crawlers, those kinds of things. Typically, I will use this is where there's not as many rock. This head tends to hang up a little bit more than this one. And the nice thing about the Frenzy is when it does hang up, a lot of times it's pretty easy to get it out. If you just get over the top of it, pop your rod tip a couple times, it'll pop out. A little softer bottom. I like this head for, well, I imagine it kicking up a little mud trail, right? So you can do the same with the dial worm here with the twist lock. And the reason I like this one, if you can see it, yeah, there's a centering pin on it. This other one I pulled out, no centering pin. These are a pain in the butt to get your worm started on. You wouldn't think the centering pin would have that much to do with it, but it does. And you can see this one sticks out a decent amount, so you can get that centered, push it up on there, and it's just that easy, right? Twist it on. And there you go. I leave the hook point out just a little bit. If I'm going to throw something in the cover, it's going to be on the Frenzy. This worm is going to hang down some. If you use a Robo, it's probably going to float up. Okay, Robo, other brands, whatever your favorite brand is, know if they float or not. It can make a difference. This past weekend, I fished this worm. Travis fished a Zoom 4.5-inch worm on the back of the Frenzy. And I would say we went fish for the most part. The interesting thing was this one caught all the smallmouth. I don't know if it had something to do with the color. That is number 297. It says NF/LO, green purple. Okay, there's purple and green flake in it. It's a green pumpkin worm. Now, the other alternative for shaky head situations, and this is what I was using last weekend. I was using the Pro Shrooms Ned rig. See how I combine Ned and rig? This one's a little bit heavier than what I was using. I was using the 1/6 ounce. Okay, we were fishing down to about 25 feet. This is a 1/5 ounce. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but it's quite a bit. Because what I was doing was rigging this just like I would an Ed head, right? I'm just threading it on there. Now, these heads aren't necessarily really good for worm longevity on here, but I was just rigging it on there just like so. So when it hits the water and that weight's pulling the worm down, right? So it actually falls at a pretty good clip. I have a Loomis IMX Pro Ned rod. So it worked really well with this. I still fished it like a shaky head, but with the big worm on it. And what I like about that is it kind of helps with snags. Okay, all this plastic, very little head and hook sticking out, but still plenty of hook bite to catch your fish. I didn't miss any fish on this, or lose any fish on this, I should say. I might have missed a bite or two, but I don't think that was the jig head. I had a couple grab the back, you could tell because it would pull the worm down. This bait, much harder to pull the worm down. This hook keeper, like I said, is phenomenal. So that's what I was using. Think outside the box a little bit. Think about the situation you're casting in and that kind of stuff. Obviously, I wasn't throwing into brush or anything like that with an open hook. However, when I'm fishing spotted bass and smallmouth bass, if I can get away with fishing an open hook, I prefer to fish an open hook. The hookup ratio is just better, right? So that's that. Now, some other alternative baits we can use on these, and that's what I like to do. Think outside the box a little bit. You don't have to use a shaky head bait, or on the Ned rig, a Ned bait. And this is a really good one on the Ned. Missile baits, Ned bomb, for when the fish really want something small. Now, some people might run into that. I've found that using a little bigger bait tends to work just fine for me. And the advantage is you got a little bit more weight when casting, especially if the wind's blowing. So one of my alternative baits, and I love these because they're very affordable. They come in a great variety of colors, is the Dinger. Typically, I'll use the 4-inch. You can use the 5, you can bite some off of it. You can use the 5, and after it tears up a little bit, bite some off and fish it until you get down to about the 3-inch mark. It really depends on what the fish are keying on and if they want a bigger bait or a smaller bait. But this works phenomenal. I don't know if a lot of people throw a Senko type bait, stick type bait on a net head, but I love it. I found it to be very successful, works really well, catches, better than average fish a lot of times. So what is my typical equipment for using or throwing shaky heads? Now, I will throw the 1/4 ounce frenzy nail around the spawn time on bait casting gear in certain situations. I'll still, the majority of time, use the spinning rod. Sorry about that. She's going to go out there and let someone know she's here, and then she's going to run in and hide behind the couch because that's what she does. All right, so typically my typical setup for a shaky head is, or net rig, same thing. I don't rig them much different. My typical is 12-pound Daiwa braid with a 10-pound FC sniper leader, and I run the leader about 5 to 6 foot. If I'm going to be somewhere where I expect to snag and break off a little bit more, then I might extend that leader to 8 foot. I prefer it not to get to the reel. It goes through the reel fine, obviously. I use the FG knot to join the braid to the fluorocarbon. So it goes through the reel, but I just don't feel like I need that much leader. I haven't had an issue getting bites. So if it works, don't change it, right? I will use that Ned rod. I like the action on it. It's got a fairly soft tip, so it's good for shaking. It's good so the fish can pick it up and not feel you while you know your rod's starting to load. And then it gets into a lot of backbone. I also will use the Daiwa Tatula Elite shaky head rod for shaky heads. Same line choices. If the fish are really finicky, or maybe I'm fishing just spotted bass, I might drop down to 6, typically no less than 8, and I like 10 if I can get away with it, because you can really lean on a fish with 10. 6, you have to be a little bit more careful, because if you get a 3.5 pound spot at 50 foot deep, they can work you over. Sometimes that's what we need to do. I haven't run into that too often. 10 pound fluorocarbons, FC Sniper is pretty good line, okay? And like I said, I had no problems getting bit. Travis was throwing an 8 pound leader, and like I said, we went fish for fish. Wasn't wide open, but we caught, I don't know, 30, 40 fish throughout the day. So give these a try. Think outside the box. Try some different baits. You can shorten baits a little bit if you need to. Don't be afraid to throw a big bait on these. You can throw an 8-inch, 9-inch worm. What's that one? A T-Mac. Those are really good shaky head worms. You can throw that on this, no problem. Okay. There are some bigger ones, obviously. I think this is a G Money Jigs shaky head. Similar type stand up, right? But it's got a monster hook on it. And this is a 4-aught. So you can see there that it's a big difference. I don't use these very often. Quite honestly, I don't think I've thrown them. I don't think I've caught a fish on them. I just really haven't fished them a whole lot. In other situations that come up once in a while, I will use a football head. I don't use them very often, but they are in my box. And then there's this style. That's a Ned. Before I throw this, I would bend the hook up a little bit. I just don't like how the point is pointing down. I find that I miss fish on these a little too often with it rigged this way, so I will bend that up if I'm going to throw that. So that's my tips and tricks for shaky head fishing. Again, the tricks, think outside the box. The Senkos, the dingers float a little bit better. So if you want to put them on the stand-up, this stand-up, the frenzy nail will hold that bait up, especially if you're shaking lightly and slow reeling it. Keep the bait moving. That tail's going to get up there, and it's really going to wave as you're doing that. And you want the fish to have to commit. You're still fishing it slow, but it's moving. So there's lots of other worms you can do this with. Like I said, the Robos, Zooms, those are kind of my staples. The Flirt Worm is another good one by Reaction Innovations. What's the new the Money Worm? That's the new missile baits one, or it's been around for a year or two now. But don't overthink it. I keep the colors pretty simple. I'm generally a green pumpkin type guy, maybe some different color flakes, or you go with shad if they're really on shad type worms. And of course, for us in Northern California, You can see that MM3, that purple brown, it's just a staple. And it's a staple for all species. The big spotted bass like it just as much as the largemouth do. And apparently the dogs are getting a little active, so I'm going to sign off for now. We'll bring you another video here real soon. But give these tricks a try. Pick yourself up some frenzy nails. I'm not sponsored by any of these products I'm reviewing, people. I just am sharing my experience with you. Hopefully save you from having to buy a whole bunch of different types. If I had one, that would be it, the frenzy nail. You can get them at Tackle Warehouse. So get out there, stick you some fish, and we'll see you soon. Fish on.